tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is actress Marie Cheatham and music personality Mr. Bonsai. Well, you'll see what he's about. Some of his art is on the set today. If you know daytime soaps, you'll know Marie created the character of Marie Horton on Days of Our Lives. She was that Marie for 9 years. Then you have to remember Stephanie Wyatt in Search for Tomorrow. Marie was nominated for an Emmy in that role. She's been a guest on The Nanny, An Empty Nest, besides a lot of other TV shows. She's also good on stage because she was nominated for the Drama Desk Award in the off-Broadway show Clash by Night. She's made movies like Soul Man, Rock and Roll Mom, but enough of Marie. It all started in Texas, didn't
But
it?
enough of Marie. Let's talk, how do you like my dress? Beetlejuice, don't forget that. It all started in Texas, yes, when I was a very long ago and far away.
Oh, and were you born in Texas?
I was born in Oklahoma City. We called it the city. I know that everybody else thinks that's New York, but if you're in Oklahoma, Oklahoma City is the city. And we moved to Texas a lot, back and forth a lot, and then Mother married 7 times before I was 12 exactly. So I ended up that was my early training. That was my early training. I ended up at the Alley Theater after Baylor University. And at the Alley Theater, there are little clumps of history and time. And there were so many people who were wonderful at that. Tommy Tune, Bobby Foxworth, Carlin Glenn, Pete Masterson, Carol Hall, Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Group came out of those people there. And I asked Nina Vance before she passed, did you know that we were all wonderful when we were here? She said, yes, and I didn't know what to do with you.
She was the artistic director?
Yes.
But the Alley Theater still has a wonderful name, doesn't
yes,
it? It's like a really great place to go. Now, how did you get from the Alley Theater to these characters that you've created?
Well, I took the bus from Houston to California reading James Baldwin on the way.
You really came to California before you went to New York?
I came to California here, yes, first. Everyone said, oh, you did it backwards. And I thought, well, I just did it like I did it. But I came here and worked in an advertising agency for 2 years, sort of like mufti in drag or in incognito. I would work there and I would go out on my lunch hour and audition like crazy and come home, come back to the office and work as a secretary. And then I got my break on Days of Our Lives.
Oh, that was your first thing.
Yes.
And I think you were correcting me and saying I've only mentioned 2 roles that you created. You've created...
Well, it's a great privilege to create and to play a long period of time roles. Marie on Days of Our Lives, Stephanie, and Aunt Charlene on General Hospital.
Oh, right.
And the evil Mary Robeson on Knots Landing. Now, these roles sort of like corresponded to the development in my personal growth because Marie Horton was a victim. Everything happened to her. And then Stephanie White was this evil uptown bitch that she caused things to happen to other people. And then Aunt Charlene on General Hospital was sort of like this laid-back crazy lady.
I remember my daughters saw that, and they said, guess what, Mom? Marie's on this thing, and she's playing a crazy lady. You've got to call her and see if she's really gone crazy.
No, they just, yes. Well, I always was, but I was in disguise. And then Mary Robeson, who wanted all the money.
Well, you've always wanted that as long as I've known you.
Yes, well, there it is.
But when you say you create it, do you work with the writers in creating it, or do they make the role for you?
Well, 2 times I was called to say, oh my, we have the impetus of an idea, and we'd like you to play it. And then because when you come to that milieu, you're mostly bringing your being, whatever your being is, because there's no rehearsal. So whatever you're able to come up with is what you get. And because you're able to manufacture this out of thin air, or your experience, actually.
Your experience, right.
Then comedy is the best thing in the world in daytime because there's so much other. The comedy stands out like little gems, and that's what I've always managed to insinuate in the roles.
Well, your name, Marie, I mean, I knew you when you were Marie.
Yes.
And then when I got this bio, I thought, maybe this is a different woman.
Maybe it's a different person. No, what happened was, well, I was going through a terrible time, a terrible 7-year legal snafu. And
With your name?
with no,
Or
no.
with your crazy marriage?
My crazy marriage, my crazy last marriage. And because I was in it, have you ever had a lawyer for lunch? No. You ever?
I have him every day.
Well, my gosh. Yes, but he's nice. But then I was in a terrible, terrible triangle between a difficult situation, and I couldn't even resign from it. It's like the tar baby. I couldn't get out. So here I was slogging along, trying to go through it. 7 years, 7 years. So I thought, what can I do now to give myself more affect in this, to have more power in my life? What can I do? Somebody said, get rid of the I in your name. It's worthless.
Oh, is
Go
that
to 2
right?
E's. You'll have more influence in your own life. So I thought, I'll try anything. So that's what
Is that what
Yes,
happened?
and then I was too embarrassed to tell people I'd done it. So I said, well, you know, I found my birth certificate at long last, and I've been misspelling my name all these years.
You're so great. Only you could get away with this. Who
cares?
You spent all this time on the soaps. Did that train you for the stage, or is it good
Vice
training?
versa.
Really?
Yes, because I am a stage actress. I am very well honed in that. When I began to work in soaps, in soaps you get a chance to go from the beginning of a scene to the middle to the end of a whole scene.
Which is like on the stage.
Which is like on stage. In movies, you take little snippet bits and pieces, your answers, their point of view, your point of view, but it's generally your answers to questions asked, maybe from off camera when it's the close-up. So you don't get this whole continuity to play. And in daytime, where you get a whole scene to play, or in nighttime, like Knots Landing was the same, you got a whole scene to play. And in the sitcoms are the same way too. You go all the way through the scene. So I'm more comfortable when you do that because it's like finishing a whole sentence.
Well, are you working on a soap now?
No, I'm working in a play now.
You're working on good
Yeah.
transition.
Good transition.
And is that character anything like the characters that you've played before?
It's a little like Stephanie Wyatt, but it's she's a bit jaundiced, a bit. She's a wealthy lady from Texas who has a young lover whom she pays for.
And it's Bluefish Cove.
Yes,
is the name
last
of it?
summer at Bluefish Cove.
And it was written several years ago, and they revived it. And it's how many? 7 women or
8 women.
8 women.
And it's set in a lesbian setting at a summer retreat, much like Fire Island. But the titillation of it being a lesbian play is just its setting. It's about relationships, and it could be about any relationships. Certainly, I'm playing the relationships I've had throughout my life.
That's another thing you were talking about is how, as an actress, you grow. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as a human being, one grows. It's grow or die. And I have the opportunity to play the roles before 60 million people of whatever I'm processing at the time. When I was Marie Horton, I played the victim, martyrdom, codependent things that were happening in my life then. I didn't realize it then because we didn't have codependent as a word then.
I see.
And then later on, I played, switched to went the other way, dyed my hair blonde, became very, svelte.
But were you living those kind of roles?
Well, I had gone through a terrible marriage, a codependent marriage, and then had come out, and then as one develops one's own power, you kind of like swing the other way, the pendulum swings. And so I was going through that period of my life, and then it all mellows out and evens out, and then the humor, your sense of humor comes back in. I can always say that you feel as healthy as your sense of humor.
The other thing, when you were playing these roles, and you actually were probably looking like these characters on the street as well. Did people come up to you? Did you have any funny incidents?
In New York, one lady came up and said, "Are you Stephanie on the stories?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I am," thinking she'd be happy to hear it. She said, "Well, quit it," because I was opposing the favorite character, and she hit me. Well, I happened to be standing in the subway, and I almost knocked off balance and into the rails, and I thought, this is dangerous. I have to develop another way of saying. So when people say, "Are you so-and-so?" I say, "No, but I play that character," which gets them a little back into reality, so they don't hit you.
what an experience.
Yeah, that
I
happens a
wondered
lot.
if that does it happen a lot? Because people recognize you.
I have a theory about it because we're small and in their living rooms almost every day. People come up to me and say, "Oh, did we go to school together?" Or I know you, and then I always say, well, I'm probably television. Now I have little cards that say the character, and and have a little room to sign so that I can give them something.
Oh, that's nice.
And that's incorporates them. It involves them.
That's nice. We talked about Texas, and I know you've been involved. You're part Choctaw.
And Creek.
And Creek, that's right, and Irish.
Yeah.
The Irish comes in.
Yeah, fair.
And you've been very instrumental and very supportive of the Indian tribes, or the, not Indian.
Well, it's
what
I do.
How do you say
Cahuilla.
it? Cahuilla.
Now, I'm working with my basket maker is Donna Largo, who is the last basket maker of the Cahuilla, and they are the indigenous people who live in the southern part of California.
Oh, the Cahuilla are indigenous to our...
Springs.
Oh. So you get to go down and see them a lot, or
Yes.
be with them, because
Yes.
they're close.
Oh, yes, and I had the great privilege of working with the Title V program of helping the kids learn their language, relearn their language, and some skills, the traditional skills. And we're building a library and a playground on the Santa Rosa Reservation up near Idlewild.
Oh,
The Cahuilla is the large name for the tribe. It's divided into several bands, and the Agua Caliente are the desert Cahuilla who live in Palm Springs.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, the
I
checkerboarded
see.
Palm Springs every other mile.
I
Yeah.
see, but they have different names. The tribes have different
That's
names.
the Agua Caliente band.
Do you actually know how to weave a
Yes,
basket?
I do, and I wish I'd brought one of my baskets with me.
Oh, I do.
It's tradition to give your first basket away, and mine was rather squarish. And it had a nice whirlwind pattern in it, and I gave it to my basket maker when I finished it.
That was nice.
And it makes me very happy because she says to people who collect her work, she said, well, I do happen to have a square basket with a whirlwind pattern. It's like a little joke between.
Some person did it. What about your jewelry?
This is made
Can
by
you hold it up? Hold it on your...
Michael
this way.
Cabote. Which way?
That
Hi,
way.
guys. This is made by Michael Cabote, who's Hopi. It has a lot of the Kiva symbols in it, and all of the symbols are powerful symbols. I asked him to make this one for me because I wanted a bracelet that had a phoenix rising from one's own ashes.
And that's you, isn't it?
Well, that's what it is.
That is the phoenix.
Yeah.
I know. You said, don't forget Beetlejuice. I don't want to forget
No!
Beetlejuice. Why were you so funny?
Because I went through the roof at the end. And when I'm working with the children, they'll come up and ask, did it hurt? And then that's how I get to explain editing to them.
Oh, that's great.
We're working in a summer project up there this summer to make plays of the myths of the Cahuilla.
Oh, and then
Yeah.
they recognize you from the things you've been in.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
I thought it
They
was
think-
important to
yeah.
show the transfer from working with them and actually being with other people, so they know that they have the confidence of someone like you.
Yes,
with them.
It is helpful in that area because they think, well, there is a reason why we're doing this, and there is a reason to get an education and to stay off drugs.
Oh, that's great.
And this lady comes here, and I can see her on my TV, and she was in Beetlejuice, or I can see her on The Nanny.
Yeah.
They love to see me in television programs because I'm their friend, and I take the time to come, and we do things together, and then it lends the projects a little more importance, I think.
I think everyone should be involved in that project. Maybe
Yeah.
our viewers will call Marie or call the
Yeah.
Indian tribe in Palm Springs and help her out somehow.
Oh.
Marie, you've been so wonderful, and I think it's kind of inspirational that you still go back to your roots and you're still helping small people.
Grow or die.
Yeah.
Grow or die.
And thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me here.
It's
Thanks a
great
lot.
seeing you.
Bye-bye.
And don't go away because Mr. Bonsai is coming back, David Goggin. Hi, we're back. I'm Joan Quinn, and we're with David Goggin, who is otherwise known as Mr. Bonsai, and we'll find out why. David is in communications art, and we'll find out about that too. I don't know what that means. He was born in New York. His father was a cartoonist, which seems to have influenced David's quirky quest through life. That have any influence on you, David?
I think it had a very important influence.
Did it?
Yeah, surrounded by a sense of humor and kind of a whimsical imagination, had a big impact. And my mother had a lot to do with it too. She was a former motorcycle mama, and
She was?
yeah, it was kind of your archetypal bohemian childhood, I guess.
Was it all in New York?
Well, it started in New York, and in fact, we used to live in Woodstock, years before it became famous. And then my dad passed away when I was about 9, and then the trek started up and down the East Coast. My mom and my sisters would just sit around. She'd say, "Shall we move?" We'd take a vote. We moved to Florida. We moved to North Carolina, and we came out here to California in the early 60s.
Is that right? That must have been fun.
Well, it instilled in me a sense of freedom that, you can do a lot if you just believe you can.
I promised our viewers we'd tell them why you're called Mr. Bonsai, so let's start with that.
Well, that was goes back to my days in radio, where I didn't like using my real name on the air because my programs were rather odd, and I didn't want to have people knowing exactly who I was or how to find me.
Odd in what way?
Well, I was part of a comedy troupe, and we just made fun of everybody.
Oh, I see.
We were merciless, and we took a lot of chances. This was in Canada and in Orange County, south of here. And so I took the name Mr. Bonsai, and then when I was doing some stage work, I started writing my material down and trying to publish, and chose that as my nom de plume.
Oh, you do? It's not a bonsai tree, huh?
No, it's a strange combination, really. There's no Japanese word for it spelled like that. It's half bonsai, the tree, and half bonsai, which is kind of like a cheer for the emperor.
Oh, I
in
see.
history.
And you know about that because this wonderful painting that you've done is of your wife.
That's my wife, Keiko Kasai. She's a sculptor, and she's from northern Japan, and she's been in America about 10 years, and we go back every year, and I get a very inside look at Japanese culture. Her grandmother just died last year. She was 97 years old.
Did she teach you the language? Do you know the language?
I only know little phrases and silly things that I can say in conversation with the family, and they sort of stop and go, "Are?" and then they laugh and fall on the floor.
Does the family like your name, Mr. Bonsai,
Oh,
or
yeah.
do they call you David?
No, they call me Mr. Bonsai, and I publish in Japan as Mr. Bonsai too. They get a kick out of it.
I see, I see. Now, does that have anything to do with your beanie that you're wearing today?
Well, we went to the Museum of Contemporary Art gift shop to get some gifts for my nephews in Japan, and they had these wonderful little beanies, and they had one big one. So it's got to be for me. So
Was it all decorated with the buttons and the little...
Oh no, I've added these things. I've got some little Beatle memorabilia stuff up there, and
Bend
crowded
forward
house.
a little bit. Ah.
You can see the blue meanies and the yellow submarine characters. Those are like from Korea in like 1967. or
You
something.
collected those.
I collected them.
Yes, now, and you brought the Beatles into this. Before we get into this communications arts, tell us about the Beatles, because I think you have a really great story as your fake journalist.
Yeah, well, I tried everything. I posed as a professor from the University of California first.
You went to London.
Right.
Were you studying abroad?
I had a year to go. I was accepted by the study abroad program, got a scholarship. The only reason I did it was to meet John Lennon, and this was a way that I could finance the trip. So I got to London, and I posed as a journalist, and I got to the top of their management, and they said, "Well, this is very interesting. What have you written?" And then I went, "Well, nothing yet." And they said, "Well, we'll be happy to send your letter along to Mr. Lennon." At that point, I told everybody that I was going to do it, so I went down to Weybridge, where he lived, and I took a chance and walked onto his property and lucked out. His maid stuck her head out of the window and said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Is John home?" And she said, "No, he's sleeping right now. Could you come back?" And I said, "No problem."
That was the big invitation, because everyone had told you do not step on the property.
They closed the gate and you were hauled away. She was kind. I owe everything to her in this case, because she let me stay in the garage, and she made me a cup of tea and some biscuits, and there I was sitting with that flowered Rolls Royce, just shaking for like 3 hours. But John came out and we talked, and I had some theories about meditation and some ideas for Zen Westerns and stuff like that. And he seemed to like it, and he invited me to ride into town with him, and we went to the studio, and they were mixing "I Am the Walrus" that night.
So you got to be a part of history, and that's why I see now why you have so many things, Beatle things on your beanie, beanie.
At the time, I didn't know that this is the first time I ever walked into a recording studio, and I've spent practically the remainder of my life in recording studios.
Was it Abbey Road?
Yeah.
Oh, that was fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, you went to University of Irvine, and you got a bachelor in English literature.
Right.
Was this trip before that or after
That was my junior year, but I was kind of an art major. I studied there during the heyday of the arts at UCI with John McCracken and Via Selmans, Tony DeLapp. And it was John McCracken who, I was going to sign up for his class again because I really enjoyed working with him. And he said, "No, you can take my class anytime. I think you should sign up for this class. There's this young English painter coming over. He's going to teach just 1 quarter, and don't miss this chance." So I said, okay. I took his advice, and it was David Hockney. And I got to tell you, he cut a very interesting character on the campus. He wore like pastel suits and matching polka-dotted hat and tie. The guy had such style and obviously really stood out. I think he was about 30.
I was going to say, it was probably not very much older than anybody. Was it in the 60s?
Yeah, this was about 66.
Young. Oh, yeah, just about that. I remember following David through Harrods one year, and like I had never met him before, and I thought, this is David Hockney. He's an old man, because he had like, his hair was bleached blonde. Was it bleached like that
yes.
at the time?
Yeah.
And he was always in a suit and a tie, and I was so shocked to know that he was a young person.
Oh, he was a great, probably my favorite teacher of all time. First day of class, he told everybody, okay, everybody gets an A. Because he said, in the real world, it isn't going to mean anything anyway.
Exactly.
And the little things he gave us to do, it was life drawing was the class. It taught me how to see. I don't really think that I'd seen before.
I think that's what he's always tried to do. He's tried to show you how to see through the camera, through his painting, through the theater, all different ways. And it looks like you learned your color lessons from him very well.
Well, I'm still trying.
What about, why do you call yourself in communication arts?
This goes back, I had to make a bill for somebody once for doing something. I think it was like voicing, being an announcer or something like that. And so I came up with the name Communication Arts as they said, you got to put this on a letterhead. And as the years have gone by, it's just worked for, it covers just about anything that I want to do, photography, radio, announcing.
So writer performing is Communication Arts, and that was at the Praxis Theater. What was that?
Oh, well, that's how I got into radio, because we did a show, an improv show, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night.
Was this in Canada or in?
This was down in Orange County.
Oh, it was in Orange County?
It was the theater that the South Coast Repertory left to go to. We took over their Second Step Theater, and they moved on to another one.
And look how far they've gone. And look how far you've come.
Well, here I am. We did a 50-hour play. We just stayed on stage.
Oh, is that what that was?
And a radio guy came down in the middle of the night, and we did the whole show for him, alone. He sat, and this was in the 60s. I don't know what was going through his mind, but
did he record it?
No. But he invited us up to the radio station, and I got into broadcasting and that sort of life, and learned about production and then engineering and more and more of the recording industry.
So that was the recording industry. I know you're a photographer, and you've been involved with people in the recording industry. And before we finish today, we have next to you just Les Paul. That is so fabulous. Tell us about that when it was done.
This is Les Paul. It's I saw him about a year ago, and he's got more hair than this. It's just because he's got these glasses pushing his hair back. He says, how did you get that picture?
You took the photograph,
Yeah,
though.
I took that at his house, and he's holding a guitar from the 30s that's inscribed with Rhubarb Red, which was the name he used when he was auditioning for Fred Waring, I think. And he pretty much, he invented the solid body electric guitar and pretty much invented multi-track recording and is the godfather of, rock and roll.
Great picture. Really wonderful personality. And this one?
This is Harry Nilsson. Again, about 10 years ago. I saw Harry last year. Of course, he passed away a couple months ago. He came to an exhibition of these photographs.
Oh.
And it was my honor to have him there on the wall and in person. A real sweet man. A real sweet man.
Did you work with these people? Did you work with Harry, or did you work with Les?
No, only as a journalist and getting to know them and asking them questions. I guess my quest with my work is to find out how the artist survives.
And when you go to do an interview, is it just a straight Q&A?
No.
What are you looking for? I mean, is it hard journalism, or are you trying to uncover something?
No. I'm a promoter, really, of the positive in life. And I ask people, do you have any hints? Can you help other people? You're successful, or what pitfalls could you help them avoid? Like Harry, when I asked him, do you know any business tricks? And he says, look, when you made the deal, don't shut up. Don't oversell the deal. Don't run the guy into the ground.
That's really good advice, isn't it? We should all learn that.
Yeah.
Well, because we're almost out of here. So, who else have you worked with in the music business?
Oh, hundreds of people. From
Mr.
Frank Zappa,
Sinatra.
Mr. Sinatra. Now, no one was allowed to those sessions. The wives weren't allowed, I was told. But I know Phil Ramone. I'd done a story about him, the producer, and I was working on a story about the engineer Al Schmidt, who's got more Grammys than any engineer in history. And they said, well, you can come in, but you're probably going to get kicked out. And I said, okay, well, I'll take the chance. Sat on the sofa. The chairman of the board came in. I tried to be the tiniest guy in the world. He kind of checked out the scene. We made a little bit of eye contact, but he kept going. They didn't kick me out, and I got to sit there while Frank, Mr. Sinatra, sang for hours.
And I'm so glad you did that, because if they'd kicked you out, you wouldn't have had anything to talk about today.
Nothing.
So thanks for being here.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Thanks. And thanks for being with us on the Joan Quinn Profiles. We'll see you next time.